Is Iraq facing difficulties as an indirect result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine? In today's video, we're going to talk about the relationship between Iraq and Russia and understand what's going on. Let's go. Like many other countries, Iraq was affected by Russia's invasion of Ukraine due to its dependence on the warring country's agricultural products. Iraq participated in a four-way summit last week in Aqaba, Jordan, to discuss food security challenges and alternatives. In the meantime, Iraq's oil market is booming after several oil-importing countries cut off Russian supplies. Iraq received oil purchase requests from European countries on March 3, 2022, in the wake of the European and US sanctions on the Russian economy. This enables Iraq to enhance its presence in the European market, which it began losing to Russia years ago. Iraq's daily production amounts to 4.26 million barrels, most of which are exported to China, India, and South Korea. About 1.1 million barrels per day are exported to Europe and purchased by Spain, Greece, and Italy, among others. Russian oil is of similar quality to Iraqi oil, and some countries' refusal to buy it is due to sanctions will increase the demand for Iraqi oil in European and East Asian countries, allowing Iraq to get more money for its oil, which benefits the country's financial position. How is this a problem? How is Iraq affected? Here it is. The Russian-Ukrainian crisis may lead Iraq to lose the Indian and Chinese markets, which buy Russian oil at $30 less than Brent crude, especially considering that Iraq exports most of its oil to China and India. Iraq is now facing some problems in the West Kurna 2 field, which is operated by the Russian Lukoil company. Iraq's export capacity is at its highest now, and increasing it by 300,000 barrels per day would require very large investments that take more than 6 months. On the home front, Iraq is experiencing a gasoline crisis due to the lack of sufficient refineries operating in the country. Iraq imports 16 million liters of gasoline per day, and the government spends about 4 million per day to subsidize gasoline prices, and the rise in oil prices increases this amount. The Russian-Ukrainian crisis has also nearly doubled Iraqi food prices since the country depends almost entirely on imports. The government has subsidized basic materials such as wheat and oil, intending to reduce prices in the local market. Their trading partners such as Iran and Turkey are suffering today from high inflation, which has created greater demand for domestically produced Iraqi foodstuffs at a lower price. Having said that, if the war continues, the food security of Iraq will remain threatened because the country cannot grow enough wheat, corn, barley, and rice due to the water crisis after Iran and Turkey cut off water, increased desertification, and decreased the proportion of arable land. Why is Iraq offering this assistance to Russia? Iraq and Russia have had a long and complicated relationship for centuries, but today, more than a decade after the Iraq War, ties between the two countries continue to strengthen. In 2018, Iraq signed a free trade agreement with Russia, a significant milestone in their relationship. The agreement, which was in the works since 2012, removed customs duties on nearly all goods traded between the two countries except for weapons. Since then, Russian companies have been making major investments in Iraq, and the two countries have continued to forge closer ties. Russia has sent energy and agricultural experts to Iraq to help support economic development and has assisted in modernizing Iraq's energy, industrial, and water infrastructure. At the same time, the two countries have held strategic talks on various topics, ranging from military cooperation to economic development. The increasing closeness between Iraq and Russia is indicative of a broader trend. Strategic ties are becoming ever more important in a region where a variety of political and commercial interests intersect. With their shared interest in the region, it is no surprise that Iraq and Russia are looking to push their relationship even further. What does the Russia war mean to Iraq? The Russia-Ukraine war has had reverberations around the world, especially in Iraq. A major consequence of the war has been increased sanctions against Russia, not only from the United States and the European Union, but many Middle Eastern nations as well, including Iraq. Sanctions have restricted economic exchange between Russia and Iraq, leading to a decrease in much-needed trade, investments, and other economic activities. This has caused a notable downturn in the Iraqi economy, and it's expected that it will continue for some time. The war has also had political implications for Iraq. It has damaged their already fraught relations with their neighbor Iran, whom Russia has supported in the conflict. Iran has retaliated by cutting some of their diplomatic ties with Iraq, and the weakened relations between the two countries have put Iraq in a precarious geopolitical situation. Furthermore, the conflict has created an atmosphere of insecurity and instability in Iraq, as regional actors increasingly try to fill the power vacuum left by the war. This has resulted in increased security threats to the nation, with some terror attacks involving Russia-backed militants occurring in Iraq recently. Implications of this offer for the broader geopolitical situation in the region? This offer comes at a time when there is already significant tension between Russia and the West over a variety of issues, including Syria. If Iraq were to provide military aid to Russia, it could potentially complicate relations between Iraq and the US, which has been providing significant military support to Iraq in its fight against ISIS. Additionally, it could further escalate the conflict in Syria, which has been ongoing for more than a decade and has already caused significant human suffering. Ultimately, this support from Iraq is unlikely to make much of an impact on the situation in Ukraine, but it shows that Iraq is willing to be a loyal ally to Russia at a time when it's being ostracized by the majority of the international community. What do Iraq and Russia want from each other? What are the Iraqis talking about to the Russians? The reason is largely due to just business and energy, according to Russian media. They will talk about Russia's Lukoil and Gazprom and large-scale projects. Trade with Iraq is growing, Moscow says. It is also planned to discuss ways to preserve the positive dynamics in bilateral trade, including through the implementation of the corresponding resolutions of the Russian-Iraqi Commission on Trade, Economic, and Scientific Cooperation, which held its 9th meeting in Moscow in August 2022, TASS says. Russia will support the new Prime Minister of Mohammed al-Sudani to ensure stability and security in the country. There is more to this than just economics and trade, though. Russia and Iraq are talking about an exchange of views about Syria, with a focus on the tasks of promoting a comprehensive political settlement in the conformity with the UN Security Council resolution, encouraging the country's post-conflict revival and expanding international humanitarian aid to Damascus. It is planned to discuss in detail the situation in the Gulf area, including the light of Russia's concept of collective security in the Gulf, the ministry noted. There is more about Ukraine. Amid the unprecedented pressure from Western countries, the Iraqi side holds a balanced position on Russia's special military operation in Ukraine, the Russian ministry said. Russia wants Iraq not only to be on its side and be a source of energy trade, but it wants to show it can swoop into a country where the US was deeply invested for many years and show that Iraq is taking Russia's side in the war on Ukraine. While the US has friends in Iraq, it is also the case that Iran has deep influence in Iraq. Iran supplies Russia with drones. There have been many attacks by pro-Iran militias on US forces in Iraq. Although those have been reduced in the last year, the US is building a large consulate in northern Iraq's autonomous Kurdistan region. At the same time, Russia wants energy ties with the Kurdistan region, but also has close ties with Turkey and wants to work with them, Iran, and the Syrian regime. If Russia can somehow undermine the US in Iraq and Syria, it can achieve a major victory in this strategic corridor. So far, Iraq has not achieved this victory, but it is slowly working towards its goals. It has been working on this goal for 30 years since the decline and fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. Lavrov's visit is not in a vacuum. Moscow knows the history and it hopes to work its way back to where it was in the 1980s in Iraq. The reference to Syria by the Russian state media is also not an accident. Recently, TASS also had an article highlighting Israel's views on Syria. Israel does not want confrontation with Russia, and incidents between military aircraft of both countries in the Syrian airspace, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in an interview with France's LCI TV channel, according to the report. Russia's state media further noted that the compromise is satisfactory for Israel and not violating Moscow's interests was found in relations with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Netanyahu said. Moscow's goal is to show that it is getting what it wants in Syria and Iraq. Syria is a historic Russian client state, and in 2015, Moscow intervened in Syria to back the Syrian regime. Since then, it has deconflicted with Israel in Syria and also held talks with Iran and Turkey. Russia's goal is to get Turkey back to normalization with the Syrian regime. Then, its goal is to get the US out of Syria. And then, its goal is to work with Iran to eject the US from Iraq. So, are they helping them? Now, we have come to the end of today's video. What do you think about Iraq helping Russia? Is Iraq going to help? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Please subscribe to get more mind-blowing videos like this one, Tap the bell icon to get notifications whenever we post another. Thanks.